My hand trembled as I set the weight down. There was a burning behind my eyes, sweat, probably, but maybe something more. I wiped a towel across my face, trying to look casual, but my heart was slamming against my ribs like it was trying to break free. He was across the gym floor again, the gym guy. Our eyes met for a split second, then I forced myself to look away. The whole thing was ridiculous. I'm a married woman, for heaven's sake. But for weeks now, those stolen glances, the quickening of my pulse that I couldn't fully explain, it had become my dirty little secret. Even from across the room, he radiated a kind of energy I hadn't felt in years. Not since before Ben. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Emily. Of course, she'd be texting me now. My bestie, my partner in crime when it came to silly stuff like this. I grinned as I unlocked it. Give me the details. The message read, accompanied by way too many excited emojis. I rolled my eyes, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. I could practically hear her voice, bubbly and enthusiastic, even through the text. This whole gym crush thing was totally her fault. Or mostly her fault. She'd been the one to point him out to me weeks ago, the one egging me on, pushing me to spill the ridiculous details. My smile faltered a little. I glanced at the mirror, at the woman staring back at me. Lines I hadn't noticed before seemed etched around my eyes, my hair held hastily in a ponytail. Had I really let myself get so dull? I tugged at my t-shirt self-consciously, then fired back a quick text. He's just some guy, Em. Stop getting excited. A lie, but she didn't need to know how his smile sent a jolt through me. I finished my workout, the thrill dampened now. Guilt was starting to creep in around the edges. I loved Emily, but the whole thing felt off balance all of a sudden. She was playing some kind of game, and maybe I'd let myself get turned into a pawn without even realizing it. Heading home, a familiar sense of unease settled over me. The kind that had been nagging at me ever since that first text. Ever since Ben had glanced at my phone and seen something that made his jaw tighten. We hadn't talked about it. He didn't have to. As soon as I walked in the door, I knew those unspoken words were about to hang heavy in the air. The house was too quiet. It always felt that way when Ben was working one of his late shifts. The silence seemed to amplify all the things I wasn't saying. I kicked off my shoes, the thud against the wood floor startlingly loud. How was your workout? The question came, a soft echo from the kitchen. Ben was standing by the sink, his back to me. He didn't turn around. Fine. My voice sounded tight. I cleared my throat, forced some lightness into the tone. Hey, how about takeout tonight? My treat. To celebrate. Being healthy? His shoulders twitched, a silent laugh maybe. Or maybe not. I hated this. Hated the way the distance was stretching between us like a yawning chasm, and all I seemed to do was make it wider with my stupid lies. Desperate for a distraction, I pulled out the takeout menus. Italian, Thai, the usual choices blurred together. My stomach churned, and it wasn't from hunger. Something had to change. Something had to give, but I couldn't face admitting the truth to Ben. Not yet. Not when I still didn't even know the whole story myself. Emily. She held the key to all this mess. Why? What the hell was she up to? The thought of her, with that bright smile and the dark secret behind it, sent a wave of fury through me. Hey, Em, I texted, the words flying onto the screen almost of their own volition. Can you talk? I hesitated, then added the question I'd been too afraid to ask, we need to meet. About the gym guy. A few agonizing minutes passed until the 3 dots signaling an incoming message popped up. Relief warred with apprehension as I waited. Finally, her reply. Sure. Tomorrow? Usual coffee spot? It was a statement, not a question. It felt off. Like Emily wasn't so eager to discuss things after all. Or maybe she was just playing another twisted round of her game. My stomach nodded, the takeout menus forgotten on the counter. Sleep was impossible. Next to me, Ben breathed evenly, oblivious to the storm brewing in my head. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying in vain to will away the image of the gym guy, the memory of Emily's old photo, the look on Ben's face when he'd seen that damn text. Morning came far too soon, and as the light seeped into the room, it only illuminated the fear clutching at my heart. The only way through this was to find the truth, and that started with Emily. The coffee shop buzzed with the usual morning crowd, but I felt strangely isolated. Every casual conversation felt like a spotlight on me, like the barista pouring my latte could somehow see the mess swirling through my head. Emily was late. Typical. Even in this, she had to be in control. My phone buzzed. Running a bit late. Traffic. Be there soon. XO. The text read, the kissy face emoji making my stomach turn. Finally, she breezed in, all smiles and apologies as she slid into the seat across from me. Her cheerful facade, the one I'd known for years, suddenly looked painted on, a mask hiding something ugly. So, she chirped, taking a sip of her drink, what's got you so serious? I shoved my untouched coffee away, my hands shaking slightly. Cut the crap, Emily. I saw the photo. Her smile wavered. For a split second, something like fear flickered in her eyes, then vanished. Photo? What photo? Don't play dumb. My voice rose, and I caught a couple of people glancing our way. The photo with him. The gym guy. And your sister, was it? A muscle in her cheek twitched. Okay, fine, maybe I knew him before. So what? So what? The words exploded from me. Don't insult my intelligence, Emily. You set the whole thing up. You knew he'd catch my eye, you encouraged me. I was just trying to help. You seemed bored, she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Bored? Is that what you call destroying my marriage? Bitterness choked my words. Why, Emily? What possible reason could you have? The question hung between us. She took a long, deliberate swallow of her coffee, and the silence stretched into an eternity. Finally, she met my gaze, and a cold smile played on her lips. Isn't it obvious? She said, her voice low. It's the same reason I do anything. Because I can. My breath caught. For a terrifying moment, I understood. This wasn't about Ben, not really. It was about power. The satisfaction of watching another woman's life crumble in her hands. And Emily, my so-called best friend, relished that power. I stood abruptly, the chair screeching against the tile floor. People were staring now, curious and a little alarmed. You're sick, I told her, disgust twisting in my gut. Her smile only widened. Maybe, but at least I'm not boring. I left the coffee shop feeling shaky, physically ill. Each step felt like a weight crushing me further into the ground. On the way home, the tears spilled over, hot and uncontrollable, leaving streaks on my cheeks. All I could see was Emily's chilling smile, her admission. And the realization hit me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The world seemed to tilt sideways. My name wasn't enough anymore, now I was Ben's wife. People I'd smiled at for years looked at me with pity in their eyes. At first, I'd tried to shut it out, keep up the appearances. But it was like trying to hold back a tide with my bare hands. Every whisper, every sympathetic glance, fueled my desperate search for answers. Emily's sister became my obsession. Her name, Sarah, whispered in a half-remembered conversation, was now my lifeline. I scoured social media like a madwoman, looking for a face that confirmed the blurry image from Emily's old feed. Hours turned into days, my eyes burning from staring at screens. Every profile of a woman who could vaguely be her sent a jolt of fear through me. Was I crazy? Or was this elaborate scheme even more twisted than I'd first thought? Finally, I hit an agonizing dead end. Sarah's online presence was either expertly concealed or non-existent. Defeat washed over me, mingled with a bone-deep anger. Emily had won this round. I was trapped in a web of suspicion without a single thread to grasp for proof. That's when I made the decision. I needed a professional. Finding the private investigator's office was a dirty, humiliating act. I slid photographs across the desk. The gym guy, Emily, an old picture of Ben from my own personal collection. And the words tumbled out in a desperate rush. Ben had been the hardest, handing over his image like a traitor. But the private investigator just nodded, his face blank, his eyes shrewd as he assessed the mess I'd brought to his doorstep. In the days that followed, waiting became a form of torture. Ben tried to reach me, his concern genuine. But every kind word, every touch, made me recoil. His sympathy was a knife in my back, a reminder that I might be losing him because of Emily's games. Emily was infuriatingly normal. Texts about lunch plans, the latest gossip, as if she hadn't orchestrated the slow destruction of my life. It was a war of nerves now, each casual interaction with her a minefield. Then, the gym guy returned. He was a ghost at first, a figure glimpsed out of the corner of my eye. And then, one afternoon, there he was, as brazen as ever. A chill ran through me. Was this Emily's latest taunt? Or was he somehow playing his own long game? I made a snap decision. I approached him, feigning ignorance of his connection to Emily. His smile was the same practiced one I'd obsessed over, but his eyes held a flicker of something new. Recognition? Wariness? Our conversation was stilted, a dance of hidden agendas. He seemed taken aback by my questions, as though I'd stumbled across a script neither of us had been given. It wasn't until days later, when the private investigator called with a report that felt like a bomb being dropped on my already shattered world, that I finally understood. And everything changed. The report burned a hole in my handbag. I gripped my phone so tightly I thought it might crack, staring at Ben's name on the screen. Hitting call should have been easy, but it felt like lifting a ton weight. We hadn't even been sleeping in the same bed for the past few nights, the unspoken tension creating a chasm between us. I need to talk to you, I said when he answered. My voice sounded small, wrecked. Okay, he said, worry and confusion lacing his tone. Is everything all right? The bitter laugh that escaped me shocked even myself. Define, all right. We met at a small park near our house, neutral territory. A swing set sat abandoned, a stark reminder of the happy family image I'd held in my head just a few weeks ago. That image was now as shattered as the trust I'd placed in both Ben and Emily. I couldn't wait any longer. I shoved the investigator's report at him. Read this, and then you're going to tell me what the hell is going on. He scanned it, his face going from puzzled to pale. Sarah? He said, the name barely a whisper, but that was years ago. It was a mistake. It was nothing? Nothing? I screamed. The word echoed strangely in the empty park. Nothing? You slept with Emily's sister. And you kept it from me. I was young, stupid. He started, then trailed off, the excuses fading in the face of my fury. The shame on his face, the guilt, it was genuine. But that didn't erase the gut-wrenching betrayal. With shaking hands, I pulled up Emily's text on my phone. Isn't it obvious? I do it because I can. I read aloud, and saw the realization hit Ben like a physical blow. She knows, he choked out. She set all this up. To hurt us. The truth crashed over me, a tidal wave threatening to drown me. Emily's twisted game, the gym guy, the way she'd preyed on my insecurities. It was revenge. Revenge for a fling Ben barely remembered. But why? The question tumbled out, pathetic and broken. Ben just shook his head, defeated. I don't know. Then, my phone chimed. It was the gym guy. Need help? The text read. My blood ran cold. Had he been watching us? Playing into Emily's hands? Looks like we have another player in this game, I told Ben, my voice hollow. He just nodded, the fight gone from him. We both knew the fragile bubble of our life together had just burst. The only question left was whether we could pick up the pieces or if Emily's poison had already seeped in too deep. My hand hovered over the reply button. This felt wrong, dirty. But a strange calm began to settle over me as I typed. If Emily wanted to play games, it was time she learned I could play them better. Maybe, I texted back to the gym guy, but I need a guarantee you're on my side. His response was almost instantaneous. Emily used me. I want her to pay. There was a cold edge to his words, a promise of retribution. It sent a shiver down my spine. Could I really trust this man? No, of course I couldn't. But I didn't need to trust him, just use him. We met in a nondescript coffee shop, the kind of place people passed through without being noticed. The gym guy, whose real name I learned was Mark, surprised me. He seemed nervous, fidgety. A far cry from his confident persona at the gym. What's your plan? He demanded, lowering his voice as a waitress approached. I laid it out, the words feeling both practiced and surreal. The fake texts, the staged photos, the accidental discoveries Ben would make. Mark listened intently, a glint in his eye. This was his element, the thrill of manipulation. It can work, he finally said. But you realize, if she finds out you were in on it? You'll lose him, for sure. I flinched. He was right. This was all a gamble, my marriage the wager on the table. But I couldn't go back to the way things were, the creeping suspicion and doubt. I'd rather face the truth, even a devastating one, than live in Emily's twisted shadow any longer. The game was on. Mark fed me tidbits of information, just believable enough to sow seeds of discord. He sent staged texts, pretending to be Emily, making veiled threats. Planting them for Ben to find was a sickening act. But with each step, I hardened my resolve. I could see the change in Emily. She sensed the shift, her control slipping away. Her calls became frantic, her attempts to explain herself weak. Each time she stumbled, Ben's eyes filled with a clarity I hadn't seen in weeks. Then, I took the biggest risk. I leaked a false story, juicy gossip about Emily's obsession with Ben, designed to spread through our social circle like wildfire. It was petty, childish, and it worked. The confrontation was inevitable. Emily cornered us at a party, her mask of composure finally cracking. As accusations flew, Ben stayed silent. It wasn't defense of Emily, but something else, a chilling understanding. The truth spilled out in a messy, tearful torrent. Emily's manipulation, her jealousy, the years of poisoned resentment she'd carefully masked as friendship. Ben watched her, horror-struck and heartbroken. That Emily, the warm confidante, had never truly existed. When it was over, when she fled in humiliated defeat, there was no sense of triumph. Only a bone-deep weariness. My victory was as dirty as Emily's scheme. The debris of our friendship scattered between Ben and me as another casualty of her deceit. The silence in our house used to feel cozy. Now it rang with hollow echoes. We moved through our days like ghosts, the unspoken words between us louder than any shouting match. Ben tried. I could see the effort etched in the lines on his face, in the way he reached for me only to hesitantly withdraw his hand. I ached for him, for the easy way we were before Emily had poisoned everything. But the doubts were always there, slithering whispers in the back of my mind. Did he still find her sister attractive? Could he look at any woman and not be haunted by the past? I scrutinized his every text, his every casual conversation, desperate for a sign of dishonesty that would justify the wall I'd built around myself. We were drowning, and I knew it. So, I made the call. The therapist's office felt sterile, the soft couches a mockery of the emotional battlefield we occupied. Individual sessions were a relief. A chance to pour out the messy tangle of rage, grief, and shame without fear of further hurting Ben. Joint sessions were torture, reliving the betrayal, the lies, the carefully constructed facade that had fooled us both. It cut deeper each time. Ben's apologies began to feel hollow. Not because he didn't mean them, but because I wasn't sure forgiveness was enough anymore. The specter of Emily hung over us, even in her absence. I'd catch people staring at us in the grocery store, their eyes flickering between Ben and me as they pieced together the snippets of gossip they'd heard. It was humiliating, a constant reminder that our private pain had become a source of public entertainment. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, things began to shift. There were days when the anger didn't consume me completely. Days when a touch from Ben felt like a promise, not a potential betrayal. Days when I looked in the mirror and didn't just see a woman who had been spectacularly fooled. One night, I found myself laughing at something Ben said. It was a real laugh, the kind that makes your belly ache. The surprise of it threw us both, but in the silence that followed, I reached for his hand and held on tight. It wasn't a magic fix. The wounds were still there, the scars visible in the way we moved a little more cautiously around each other. But that shared laughter, that simple gesture of connection, it gave me the tiniest glimmer of hope. Hope that the pieces of our shattered lives might not just be glued back together, but maybe, with time and hard work, could be reassembled into something even stronger than before. Hope that we might be able to forgive, forget, and maybe even rediscover love, if we were brave enough to try. Time moved differently now, not in the heart-pounding, panic-filled stretches of the initial fallout, but in a slow and measured way. Scars don't vanish overnight, but they fade, become less tender with each passing day. That's how it felt with us. The wounds were still there, under the surface, but they weren't the gaping holes they once were. One morning, I woke up with a strange sense of restlessness. The job I'd kept on autopilot throughout the whole ordeal suddenly felt suffocating. It wasn't the work itself, but the echoes it held of the woman I was before, the woman who had so blindly trusted the wrong people. I needed a change. The job search was scary, exhilarating. Each interview, each step outside my comfort zone, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Ben's support was unwavering, even on days when my own confidence wavered. It was in those moments, as he bolstered my courage, that I saw the strength of the trust we'd carefully rebuilt. News of Emily trickled in on the wind. She'd moved away, to another state, another life. It was the ending I'd wanted, but it brought little satisfaction. She was becoming what I wanted her to be, irrelevant. A bitter footnote in our history, not the looming villain of our present. Ben surprised me. A weekend getaway to a cabin in the woods, just the two of us. Not a grand gesture filled with forced romance, but a quiet escape from the reminders of the past that still clung to our home. Evenings by the fire, talking for hours. The conversations weren't deep, not about trauma and betrayals. They were about dreams. Silly ones about starting a garden, big ones about traveling someday when the ache had fully faded. They were about the quiet joy of knowing those dreams were shared, built on a foundation more solid than before. One night, he reached for my hand. There was a hesitation, a ghost of the old mistrust, but I met his grasp. His fingers threaded through mine, and the simple contact felt like a victory. The firelight flickered over our faces, and I saw a reflection of myself in his eyes. I wasn't just Ben's wife anymore. I was stronger, wiser, still a work in progress, but my own woman at last. The weekend wasn't a magic cure. We came home to a world that still held whispers of our pain. But beneath the whispers, there was a new melody. It was tentative, sometimes discordant, but it was the sound of healing, of resilience. The sun rose on Monday, another ordinary day yet extraordinary in its promise of a future we were building together. There would be stumbles, shadows of the past would undoubtedly reappear. But we faced them now with a shared understanding. Emily, the gym guy, the whole messy betrayal. It was part of our story, a chapter that had shaped us. But it wasn't the whole book. The best pages were still waiting